You're about to hear a story about a young woman who had to make a tough choice between family obligations and her own needs. Trust me, you don't want to miss how it unfolds. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, make sure to subscribe.
I, 17F, have two younger siblings, 8M and 5F. My parents recently dropped a bombshell on me. They're planning a month-long trip abroad and expect me to babysit my siblings full-time while they're gone. No discussion, no asking if I was okay with it, just, you'll be in charge. At first, I thought they were joking. A whole month? I have school, extracurriculars, a part-time job, and, a life. But they were dead serious. They told me it would be a good experience and that they were trusting me because I'm mature. I told them no. They freaked out. My mom started guilt-tripping me, saying, "We raised you for 17 years and you can't do this one thing for us?" My dad said I was being selfish and that family takes care of family. I asked why they couldn't get a babysitter or leave my siblings with our grandparents. They said babysitters were too expensive and that our grandparents were too old to handle young kids. So, apparently, I'm the free alternative? They kept pushing, saying I just have to make a few sacrifices. When I pointed out that a few sacrifices equals my entire life for a month, my mom rolled her eyes and told me to stop being dramatic. Now they're giving me the silent treatment and making me feel like a terrible daughter. My younger siblings don't understand what's going on, but they keep asking me if I'm excited to spend time with them, which makes me feel even worse. I feel like I'm being backed into a corner. But am I actually in the wrong here? But then things took a turn, and now I don't even know what to do. The next day, my mom came into my room all calm, like nothing had happened. She sat on my bed and said, "Let's be reasonable. We'll pay you." I asked how much, thinking maybe they were finally taking this seriously. She smiled and said, "We were thinking $100. $100. For an entire month of raising two kids by myself. That's barely over $3 a day." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She actually thought I'd drop my entire life for that. I told her, "You'd pay a babysitter at least $15 an hour, but I'm worth $3 a day?" She got annoyed and said, "You live here for free, don't you?" That's when I lost it. I reminded her that I'm still a minor and that it's literally their responsibility to take care of their kids. She scoffed and walked out, muttering about how she thought she raised a good daughter. Then my dad got involved. That night, he sat me down and laid out an ultimatum. "If you don't do this, don't expect any more help from us. No rides, no allowance, no paying for your phone." I was shocked. They were basically threatening me into doing it. I told them I wouldn't be bullied into being a full-time parent for them. He just shook his head and said, "You'll regret this when we're gone." And guess what? They actually booked the tickets anyway, checked my mom's email when she left it open on the computer, and their flights are confirmed for next week. They're acting like I already said yes. I don't even know what to do now. Do I try to stand my ground? Do I warn someone? Because if they actually leave, I'll be stuck in a situation I never agreed to. But then I found out something that made this so much worse. A couple of days later, I overheard my mom on the phone with her friend. I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. I had just walked past her room when I heard her say my name. "Yeah, she's being difficult about it. But don't worry. Once we're gone, she won't have a choice." I froze. They were seriously planning to just leave me here with the kids, whether I agreed or not. No backup plan, no safety net, just assuming that once they were on that plane, I'd be forced to step up. I felt sick that I knew I had to do something. So I called my aunt, my dad's sister. She's the only reasonable adult in the family, and I told her everything. How they were trying to force me into this, how they were literally planning to abandon their kids here, how I had no idea what to do. She was furious. She told me that what they were doing was completely irresponsible and even borderline illegal. She said if they actually left me alone with my siblings, that could be considered child abandonment and CPS would get involved. That scared me because I hadn't even thought about that before. But at the same time, it made me feel validated. Like I wasn't just being selfish, I was being put in an impossible situation. Then she said something that changed everything. "Pack a bag. If they try to leave, you come stay with me." And now, I actually have an escape plan. But the question is, do I tell my parents or just leave and let them deal with the consequences? I decided to keep quiet. If I told my parents about my plan, they'd just find a way to guilt trip or trap me. So I started secretly packing, just the essentials, enough to last me a few weeks at my aunt's place. Meanwhile, my parents were acting like everything was fine. They even started being extra nice to me, probably thinking that if they buttered me up enough, I'd just go along with it. My mom made my favorite dinner one night and said, "See, it won't be so bad. You'll get to bond with your siblings." I wanted to scream. Then, 2 nights before their flight, my dad pulled me aside and gave me a list of instructions. Times to wake the kids up, what to cook for them, their bedtime routine. He even included emergency numbers, which was basically just a list of his friends. I stared at him and said, "So you're really going to do this? Just leave us here and hope for the best?" He looked annoyed and said, "You're acting like we're leaving you in the woods. You're 17. You'll be fine." That's when I snapped that I laughed in his face and said, "Good luck with that." I walked away before he could respond, and that was the moment I knew for sure I was leaving. The night before their flight, I waited until everyone was asleep, grabbed my bag, and left for my aunt's house. I sent my parents a simple text, "Since you're so sure I'll be fine taking care of the kids alone, I'm sure you'll be fine too. Good luck." Then I turned my phone off. What happened next? Let's just say it didn't take long for chaos to hit. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts and missed calls from my parents. I'd left my phone on silent, so I didn't see any of them until around noon. My mom's texts were filled with panic and anger, while my dad's were more like empty threats. They were both furious, accusing me of abandoning my siblings and breaking their trust. I didn't reply right away. I needed time to process what I had done, but part of me felt relieved, like I had finally taken control of my life. My aunt made me breakfast, and I spent the day with her, enjoying a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in weeks. But of course, that was short-lived, by that afternoon. I couldn't ignore it anymore. My mom's calls kept coming in, each one more desperate than the last. She was worried about my siblings, saying they were asking for me and didn't understand why I wasn't there. That's when the guilt started creeping in. I never wanted to hurt my siblings. They were just caught in the middle of all this. But I couldn't let that stop me from standing up for myself. I finally decided to respond, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of apologizing. Instead, I said, "You made it clear that this wasn't a choice for me, so I'm making one for myself. I'm staying with Aunt Katie. Please figure it out with the kids. I'm not coming back." The silence on the other end was almost deafening. My mom tried calling me back, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I was too scared of what she might say, or worse, what she might do. A couple of hours later, I got a message from my aunt. Apparently, my dad had shown up at her house looking for me. He was demanding I return home, but my aunt stood her ground and told him she wasn't letting me go back until we had a serious conversation about the whole situation. She told him that what they were doing was unacceptable, and that if they tried to leave me in charge of my siblings without my consent, she would have no choice but to get child services involved. I knew my dad was furious, but hearing that my aunt was ready to stand up for me made me feel like I wasn't as alone as I had thought. Still, I could tell my parents were getting desperate. That night, my mom sent me a long, emotional text. It was filled with guilt. She said things like, "How could you do this to us?" And, "We've always been there for you. And this is how you repay us." It hurt, but I knew I couldn't back down. I hadn't just been disrespecting them. I had been forced into an impossible situation, and they were now treating me like I had no right to set boundaries. The next day, they showed up at my aunt's house unannounced. My dad was at the door, demanding to speak with me. He looked furious, but there was also something else in his eyes, fear. He kept saying, "This is going to hurt the family. This is going to ruin everything." My aunt was firm, but kind. She told him that they had no right to put me in this position, and that if they were serious about this family trust thing, they needed to start respecting my autonomy. My dad didn't take that well. He said, "We're the parents, and you're the kid. You don't get to make decisions for this family." I stood in the hallway, watching the whole exchange, my heart racing. For the first time, I felt like I was really standing up for myself. This wasn't just about babysitting. It was about being treated like a person with rights. I wasn't just a babysitter on demand, and I wasn't going to be used as a free labor force. But at the same time, seeing my dad so upset tore at me. I couldn't help but wonder if I was making a huge mistake. My aunt turned to me after the conversation, sensing my hesitation, and said, "You've done nothing wrong. You've been forced into this, and now they need to see the consequences of their actions." That's when I realized she was right. They had pushed me to this point, and now it was time for them to deal with it. But things didn't end there. My parents weren't ready to give up on me just yet. Over the next few days, they tried everything, from calling my aunt's house nonstop to sending me guilt-filled messages. My dad even tried apologizing, a bit too late, if you ask me. He said he didn't mean for things to get this out of hand, and that he was sorry for not listening to me sooner. But it felt more like damage control than a real apology. I couldn't help but feel conflicted. Did I want to forgive them? Of course. But they had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to pretend like everything was okay just because they apologized. I needed them to show that they respected me as more than just a free babysitter. That's when I got a call from my mom that completely caught me off guard. She said, "We'll cancel the trip." She was serious. She told me they weren't going to go if I didn't agree to come back home. I was speechless. They were actually willing to cancel their trip because they couldn't get me to come back. That's when I realized how badly they had been taking me for granted all this time. They were willing to cancel something important to them just to maintain control over me. And then they made one final move. My mom, in one last-ditch effort, came to my aunt's house to talk face to face. I wasn't sure what to expect at this point, but I could see she was trying to be more calm and reasonable than before. She sat down with me, and for the first time, she wasn't making demands. She seemed almost vulnerable. "I know we pushed you too far," she started, her voice softer than usual. I thought you'd want to help. I thought it would be a good bonding experience for all of us." I listened, but I could feel the hurt still lingering inside me. I had been treated like I had no choice in the matter. She was asking for forgiveness, but it felt more like a last-minute attempt to fix things before they got even worse. I was struggling to decide if I should give in or stick to my guns. I told her exactly how I felt. "It's not about bonding. It's about respect. You assumed that I'd drop everything for you, and you didn't even consider what I needed. You can't just ask me to put my life on hold because you didn't want to make arrangements." Her face dropped for a moment, and I could see she wasn't prepared for the bluntness of my words. She nodded slowly, like she was starting to process it. "I didn't realize how much this would affect you," she admitted. "I thought you'd be okay with it. I thought you'd be happy to help us." That made me feel even more frustrated. They had completely misunderstood me. It wasn't about helping, it was about expectations and control. I said, "I've been helping for years without asking for anything, but I'm still a teenager. I have my own life, and I deserve to have a choice in how I spend my time." I could tell she was getting emotional, her eyes starting to tear up, but I couldn't let that stop me from speaking my truth. "You can't treat me like this and expect me to be okay with it. I'm not just here to serve you. I have my own plans, my own future, and I won't let you decide that for me." There was a long silence. She seemed to sigh deeply, as if she was finally accepting the reality of what I was saying. "I understand," she whispered. "I didn't see it from your perspective. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone, but I see now I was wrong." It felt like a small victory, but the tension wasn't completely gone. My mom and I hugged, but it wasn't the same as before. It was more of a silent acknowledgement of the mess we had gotten ourselves into. I knew things weren't going to go back to normal immediately. After our conversation, she went home to talk to my dad. I wasn't expecting any miracles, but at least now there was some understanding. A few hours later, I got a message from my mom, apologizing again for everything and promising they wouldn't leave until we figured out a better solution. I'm not sure if she really meant it or if she was just trying to salvage their trip, but I could feel a shift in their attitude. Then came the hardest part, telling my siblings. I felt terrible about leaving them, but I had to stay strong. I explained to them that I wasn't abandoning them, but I couldn't be their full-time caretaker anymore. It was awkward, and there were a lot of questions from them, but my youngest sibling hugged me and said, "I understand. I just wish you were here." I realized that my siblings didn't know the full extent of everything that had been going on. They didn't understand how hard it had been for me. They saw me as just their big sister, but not the person who had been stuck in the middle of all the family drama. So, after a few more back and forth messages and calls, My parents finally agreed to cancel the trip and rearrange their plans. They would stay home and figure out a better arrangement for the kids. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. But now I'm left with this feeling. Did I make the right decision? I stood up for myself, but the fallout was harder than I thought it would be. My parents seem to be taking this much harder than I expected, and I'm starting to wonder if I'll ever really get the same relationship back with them after all this. And now, there's one more thing I have to face: why Dad has been acting distant. It's like he's treating me differently now. The distance from my dad was noticeable. He would barely make eye contact with me whenever we were in the same room. He would only speak to me when absolutely necessary, and even then, his tone was curt, almost like he was still holding on to the anger. It was as though the apology he'd given didn't actually mean anything to him, and the entire situation was just a way for him to cover his pride. First, I tried to push it aside. I thought it might just be a phase, or that he would come around eventually. But the days dragged on, and his coldness only seemed to grow. One evening, I decided to confront him about it. I couldn't continue living under this unspoken tension. I waited until we were alone, sitting at the kitchen table. "Dad," I began, my voice shaky, "is everything okay? You've been acting different." He didn't look at me right away. There was a long pause. His fingers tapped nervously against the side of his mug, and I could tell he was trying to figure out how to respond. Finally, he spoke, but his words were laced with disappointment. "I just didn't think you'd make such a big deal out of it," he said quietly. "We asked for your help, and you couldn't even do that for us. It's hard for me to accept." It felt like a slap in the face. I tried to stay calm, but the hurt was almost unbearable. "I didn't make a big deal out of it, Dad. I just asked to be treated like an adult. You didn't even give me a choice. I felt like you used me, and you just expected me to drop everything to help out. No questions asked." He stared at me for a while, the anger flickering in his eyes. But there was something else there too: regret. Finally, he let out a long sigh. "Maybe I was wrong to push you like that, but I still feel like you should have stepped up. You're the oldest. You should have known that family comes first." I felt my heart race. Family does come first, Dad, but so do my own plans and my own life. I'm not a child anymore, and I shouldn't be forced into making decisions that don't feel right just because you want me to. The silence between us stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. I could feel him processing what I said, but at the same time, I could see that he didn't fully understand. He wasn't ready to admit that he had made a mistake. "I guess we both need to learn to respect each other's boundaries better," he muttered after a long pause. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was something. I wasn't sure if it would change anything, but I could feel a slight shift in his tone. I didn't want to leave it there, though. I needed him to understand just how much this situation had affected me. "Dad, I need you to see that my boundaries matter too. You can't keep treating me like I'm just supposed to put everything aside for the family. I have my own dreams and responsibilities. I love you, but I can't sacrifice everything just to make you happy. I need my space, my choices." For a moment, there was no response. And then, finally, he looked at me, and I could see something had clicked. It wasn't a perfect understanding, but it was progress. "I don't know if I'll ever get it completely, but I see where you're coming from. Maybe I was too hard on you. I'll try to respect your choices more," he said quietly. It wasn't the full reconciliation I had hoped for, but it was enough. The next few days were quieter. My dad didn't keep up with the cold treatment anymore, but I could tell that we still had a long way to go. He wasn't going to suddenly be the father I wanted him to be overnight, but at least we were finally talking. That felt like a step in the right direction. But just when things were starting to settle down, my mom came to me with some unexpected news. Apparently, they've been talking about asking me to babysit again, and now I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I couldn't believe it when my mom mentioned it. After everything that had happened, they were still considering asking me to step in again, and this time, it felt like they were just testing the waters to see if I'd cave. When she brought it up, I was honestly stunned. She told me that they were planning another short trip, and they wanted to know if I'd be willing to help with my younger siblings for a week while they were away. The moment she said it, I could feel my heart sink. "Mom, I thought we talked about this already," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't just keep dropping everything for you. I need to have the freedom to live my life." to do my own thing. She didn't look upset this time, but I could see the hope in her eyes, the kind of hope that made me feel guilty for even thinking about saying no again. It was like she was trying to appeal to my better nature, to the part of me that couldn't bear to disappoint her, to let her down again. I know, sweetie, I know, she said softly, but this is really important to us. It's just for a few days. You can handle it, right? You're the best person for the job. I felt the pressure mounting. It was the same thing all over again. The subtle guilt tripping, the expectation that I would be the one to sacrifice. But this time, I couldn't just go along with it. I knew better now. Mom, I can't keep doing this, I said firmly. I understand that you need help, but it's not fair to expect me to put my life on hold every time. I'm not your backup plan. I have my own life, my own goals, and I can't keep prioritizing everything for you. There was a long silence. Her face fell, and for a brief moment, I thought she might cry again, but this time, I stood my ground and I had to. But what about the kids? She asked quietly, her voice tinged with worry. They really need you. They don't understand why you're pulling away. I sighed. I'm not pulling away, Mom. I love them, but I can't be their full-time babysitter anymore. It's not healthy for me, and it's not fair to them either. They need to learn that they can't just rely on me all the time. You need to find another way, and I can't keep being the one to solve everything. She nodded slowly, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. I wasn't sure if she was fully understanding yet, or if she was just trying to make me feel better. I get it. I really do, she said, her voice softer now, but with an edge of sadness. I'll talk to your dad again and see what we can work out. I know it's not easy. I hoped she was truly listening this time, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The guilt still lingered, and part of me felt like I was failing my parents in some way by not just stepping in. But the other part of me, the stronger part, knew that I was doing the right thing. I had to keep pushing for my independence, even if it meant facing some uncomfortable conversations. Later that evening, I received a text from my dad. It was short and to the point. We'll find someone else to help out this time. We understand your decision. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I was relieved, yes, but also a little uncertain. Was this really the end of the conversation? Or would they come back to me again the next time they needed help? A few days passed after the conversation, and things between my parents and me seemed to settle down. They didn't bring up the babysitting request again, which was a relief. The tension didn't completely disappear, but at least it was manageable. I didn't feel like I was under constant pressure to drop everything for them, and for the first time in a while, I could breathe a little easier. However, the guilt didn't go away completely. Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of my mom looking at me with a sort of quiet disappointment, and I'd wonder if I had done the right thing. There were moments when I felt like I might have hurt them by saying no, but then I reminded myself that I had to do what was best for me, even if it meant disappointing them in the short term. A couple of weeks later, my mom called me. I braced myself for another conversation about how they needed help or how I should reconsider. But this time, her tone was different. She told me that they'd managed to work things out on their own. The kids were adjusting just fine, and they had found other solutions that didn't involve me. It was a relief to hear that they were managing without me, but part of me felt unsettled. It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for. There was no acknowledgement, no reassurance that my decision was the right one in their eyes. Instead, it was just a matter-of-fact statement about how things were working out. And in a way, that was enough. I didn't need them to say they were proud of me or that they understood. The fact that they were figuring it out on their own was the validation I needed. It meant they didn't need me to sacrifice my own plans for theirs anymore. It wasn't the perfect outcome. There was still some tension, and I still felt guilty from time to time. But I knew one thing for sure. I had stood up for myself, and that was a step in the right direction. I wasn't just going to be the family's fallback plan anymore. I had the right to make my own decisions, and as hard as it was, I knew it was the only way I could move forward, so, no, I didn't regret my decision. I wasn't sure my parents fully understood it, but at least they were no longer relying on me to fix everything for them. I had made a choice that allowed me to continue building my own life, and that was enough for me.
So, what do you think? Did she handle the situation right, or was she being too harsh on her family? Let me know in the comments if you think she's the a-hole or if she made the right call. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. We'd love to have you back for the next one.